Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum Thema 3, sich formell vorstellen. Welcome to topic 3, formal introductions. In the last topic, we looked at introductions in informal situations, such as at school, at university, at parties, or at other social gatherings. In this topic, you'll learn to ask for people's names and introduce yourself in German in formal situations, for example, in a professional context. As always, I'll first give you an overview of the key words and phrases you will need for this topic, and I will then talk you through some important grammar and language use points. Like in the last videos, I suggest that you try to understand the words and phrases from context first, without looking up individual words. You can always stop the video to repeat after me to practice your speaking skills. Also make sure to review this video several times over the course of this week to revise the new words and phrases. There will be plenty of practice opportunities in the Moodle course as well for you. Los geht's! Let's look at how to introduce yourself in German in formal situations. These are Miss Wagner and Mr. Salini. Let's look at what Miss Wagner and Mr. Salini say to introduce themselves. Guten Morgen, ich heiße Mario Salini. Und wie heißen Sie? Freut mich, Herr Salini. Ich bin Nadja Wagner. Stop the video now if you need more time to read what Ms. Wagner and Mr. Salini are saying. Note how they introduce themselves and how they address each other. We'll look at this further in a bit. Now, analyze the dialogues and try to answer the following questions. What does freut mich mean? Here are Mrs. Schulze and Miss Diaz. Let's look at what they say to introduce themselves. Entschuldigung, sind Sie Frau Schulze? Ja, genau. Ich bin Julia Schulze. Und wer sind Sie? Ich bin Maria Diaz. Freut mich, Frau Schulze. Stop the video now to read what the people are saying. Again, take note of how they introduce themselves, how they address each other, and what questions they're asking. Analyze the dialogue and try to answer the following question. What is the German word for Miss or Mrs.? What does Entschuldigung mean here? And what is the German word for you in formal situations? So you've already met Ms. Wagner and Ms. Schulze. Let's see what they say to each other. Guten Morgen, ich bin Julia Schulze. Sind Sie Frau Herzog? Nein, ich heiße Nadja Wagner. Oh, Entschuldigung, freut mich, Frau Wagner. Again, pause the video to read and analyze the dialogue. Try to answer the following questions. Can you figure out what might have happened here? You came across Entschuldigung in the previous slide already, but what might Entschuldigung mean in this context? We'll look at this more closely shortly. Okay, let's look at the new phrases again. Repeat after me. If you need more time, pause the video. Wie heißen Sie? Wie heißen Sie? Wer sind Sie? Wer sind Sie? Ich heiße Mario Salini. Und wer sind Sie? Here's another option for introductions. You can introduce yourself and then ask the other person who they are by adding und. Ich heiße Mario Salini. Und wer sind Sie? Try it yourself with your own name. If you think you know someone's name but want to confirm, you can ask a yes or no question. Sind Sie Frau Schulze? Sind Sie Frau Schulze? You can confirm this question with ja, ja, or you could confirm with genau, genau, or even ja, genau, ja, genau. Or you could say nein, nein. What can you say if you want to get someone's attention? For example, if you're approaching someone and they haven't seen you yet. You can say Entschuldigung, which in this situation means excuse me. Entschuldigung, sind Sie Frau Schulze? Entschuldigung. As you saw in the last slide, Entschuldigung can mean excuse me, but you can also use Entschuldigung to apologize, to say sorry. For example, in this dialogue, the first speaker got someone's name wrong. Sind Sie Frau Herzog? Nein, ich heiße Nadja Wagner. Entschuldigung, Frau Wagner. So to recap, Entschuldigung can mean excuse me if you want to get someone's attention, or it can mean I'm sorry if you want to apologize. So very important word. Entschuldigung. What do you say when someone introduces themselves to you? You can reply with freut mich, which means it's a pleasure. Ich bin Nadja Wagner. Freut mich, Frau Wagner. Freut mich. Let's look at some of these phrases in a bit more detail. In the last lessons, we looked at informal situations. You learned to ask, wer bist du? Who are you? Du means you, but only in informal situations and only if you're addressing only one person. And you learned to ask, wie heißt ihr? With ihr also meaning you if you're addressing two or more people in an informal situation. In this lesson, we're looking at formal situations. So you've just learned to ask, wer sind Sie? Sie also means you, but you would use Sie in formal situations, for example, in a business or professional context. Remember that du, ihr, and Sie are pronouns. You use them instead of a noun or someone's name. Let's go through these questions and phrases again. Wer bist du? Wie heißt ihr? Wer sind Sie? Ich heiße, wir sind. So let's look at the pronouns we know so far. Ich, wir, if you want to refer to yourself or yourself as part of a group. Du, ihr, and Sie, if we want to address other people, either individually or as a group, informally and formally. Remember that du, ihr, and Sie all mean you in English. Let's look at the formal form of address, Sie, a bit more closely. So you would use Sie to address someone either individually or as a group. You would use Sie if you don't know someone well, or if they're older than you, or if it's a formal situation. But you would also use Sie for someone at the same level as you, at the same age, if it's a formal situation, for example, in a business context. Note that if you're addressing someone informally, you would usually use their first name. Bist du Marita? If you're addressing someone formally, if you're using Sie, you would usually use their last name. Sind Sie Frau Schulze? Let's summarize again. So in this video and the last videos, you learned about the different forms of address, du, ihr, and Sie. Du is always singular, only referring to one person. Ihr is plural, referring to two or more people. Sie can refer to one or more people. Also note that you always spell Sie with a capital letter. We'll talk about why this is a little later on. You also learned new conjugations for the verbs heißen and sein. Do you remember what conjugation means? Stop the video now to read the information in the summary table. To conjugate a verb means to match its ending to the person or thing it refers to. Let's go through this table together. Ich heiße, du heißt, sie heißen, wir heißen, ihr heißt, sie heißen. Note how the first three forms are singular, referring to only one person. The next three forms are plural and refer to two or more people. Also note that some verb endings are the same for different pronouns. For example, du heißt, ihr heißt, and wir heißen, sie heißen. This is a recurring pattern for most verbs, and it should make it much easier for you to learn these verb forms off by heart because there are fewer forms to remember. And then there's the verb sein, which doesn't adhere to any of those patterns at all and is completely irregular. Let's go through the conjugation. Ich bin, du bist, sie sind, wir sind, ihr seid, sie sind. Again, note how some forms are the same. My recommendation would be to revise this table a couple of times this week and to try and learn the pronouns and verb forms off by heart, so it'll eventually just sound right to you and you don't need to think about it anymore. Earlier in this video, I asked you to try and identify the German words for Mr., Ms. and Mrs., so forms of address. Read this dialogue again. Nadja Wagner addresses the other person as Herr Salini. Herr is the form of address you'd use similar to Mr. in English. Now read this exchange again. Miss Diaz addresses the other woman as Frau Schulze. Frau is the form of address you'd use similar to the English Miss or Mrs. Let's look at the two different types of questions we can ask. So we can ask questions with a question word. They usually in German start with a W. And we can ask yes or no questions. They usually start with a verb. Read the two questions and note how the structures are similar. Wer sind Sie? Sind Sie Frau Schulze? Can you figure out which one is a yes or no question and which one uses a question word? Questions starting with a question word are open-ended questions. That means you cannot answer them simply with a yes or no answer. So, wer sind Sie? Ich bin Maria Diaz. Questions without a question word start with a verb and they usually require a yes or no answer. Sind Sie Frau Schulze? Ja, genau. Or, nein, ich bin Maria Diaz. As an exercise, try to write down any questions you've learned so far in this course and also write down possible answers to them. Here's some help. Wie heißt du? Ich heiße Kendra. Wie heißt ihr? Wir heißen... Wie heißen Sie? Ich heiße Kendra Jautzin. Bist du Maria? Nein, ich bin Kendra. Heißt du Max? Ja, genau. Und so weiter. And so on, and so on. Gut gemacht. Das war Thema 3, sich formell vorstellen. That's it for topic 3, formal introductions. If you want, watch the video again or continue with the lesson in Moodle for some practice activities and come back to this video later on for revision and pronunciation practice.